Lonzo Ball came into the NBA with something most players never experienced: expectations that were already sky high before he even played a single game. From the moment he was dominating in high school alongside his brothers, it felt like the spotlight was always on him. But it just wasn't because of his game. A lot of it had to do with his father, LeVar Ball, who made bold claims that Lonzo Ball was better than players like Stephen Curry before Lonzo had even stepped on an NBA court. That kind of hype is dangerous because when you're labeled to a future star that early, anything less than greatness starts to feel like a failure. And that's exactly where Lonzo Ball's story begins. At UCLA Bruins, Lonzo looked like everything people had hoped he would be. He played at a fast pace, unselfish style that made everyone around him better. His court vision was elite. His passing was flashy but effective. And he had this ability to control the game without needing to score 30 points every night. For a while, it really looked like he can be the next great point guard in the NBA. That one season at UCLA boosted his draft stock like crazy. He became the second overall pick in the 2017 NBA draft, selected by the Los Angeles Lakers. And that's where things start to get real. Playing for the Lakers is different. The pressure is different. The expectations are different. This is a franchise built on legends like Magic Johnson, Kobe Bryant, Shaq, Kareem. So when Lonzo stepped onto that court, he wasn't just another rookie. He was supposed to be the next face of the franchise. But right away, they were problems. The first issue was his scoring. Lonzo had never been a dominant scorer, even in college, but in the NBA, it became a real weakness. His shooting was so unorthodox, and defenders quickly figured out how to exploit it. His three-point shooting was inconsistent, and his free throw shooting was honestly one of the biggest red flags, for a point guard especially, one expected to lead a team. Not being able to reliably score made things tough. Then there were injuries. Lonzo couldn't stay on the court. His rookie season was cut short, and that started a pattern that would follow him for years. Every time it felt like he was starting to build momentum, something would happen. An ankle injury, a knee issue, something that kept resetting his progress. But even with all that, Lonzo still showed flashes. He was still an elite defender. His basketball IQ was undeniable. He could read passing lanes, anticipate plays, and guard multiple positions. And his passing, his best skill, never went away. You can see moments where he controlled the tempo of the game like a veteran. Still, the narrative was already starting to shift. Instead of being seen as a future superstar, people started questioning whether he would ever live up to the hype. And in a place like Los Angeles, that pressure doesn't go away. It gets louder. Everything changed in 2019 when the Lakers traded Lonzo to the New Orleans Pelicans as a part of the deal to acquire Anthony Davis. For a lot of players, getting traded that early in your career can feel like a step back. But for Lonzo, it was actually an opportunity. In New Orleans, the spotlight wasn't as intense. He had more room to grow, more freedom to develop his game without the constant pressure of being the savior of a franchise. And for a while, it looked like things were turning around. His shooting started to improve. He worked on his form, became more confident from beyond the arc, and started to look more of a complete offensive player. He still wasn't a primary scorer, but he didn't need to be. He fit into a system with young talented players, moving the ball and playing defense, and contributing in ways that didn't always show up on the stat sheet. But the injuries didn't stop. That's really the story of Lonzo Ball's career. Just when things start to look up, something pulls him back. After 2 seasons with the Pelicans, Lonzo signed a deal with the Chicago Bulls in 2021. And this is where things get both hopeful and heartbreaking at the same time. Because when Lonzo first arrived in Chicago, he looked like the best version of himself. He was hitting threes consistently, his defense was elite, he was pushing the pace, making smart decisions, and helping transform the Bulls into a competitive team. Alongside players like Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, the Bulls were actually on top of the teams in the Eastern Conference for a stretch. It finally felt like everything was coming together. And then, it all fell apart once again. Lonzo then suffered another knee injury in early 2022. At first, it didn't seem like it would be career altering. Injuries happen, players recover. That's just part of the game. But this one was different. He had surgery, then more complications. Reporters started coming out that he was having trouble doing basic basketball movements, running, jumping, cutting. Things that are second nature to NBA players suddenly became difficult, and the timeline kept getting pushed back. Weeks turned into months, months turned into years. Lonzo missed the rest of the 2022 season. Then he missed the entirety of the 2023 NBA season, and eventually, it reached the point where people started asking a question that no player ever wants to hear. Will he ever play again? That's when the conversation around Lonzo Ball really changed. It wasn't about whether he could become a superstar anymore. It wasn't even about whether he could even make an all-star team. It became about whether his career was essentially over before it ever fully got started. And that's what makes his story so frustrating. Because if you look at his skill set, Lonzo wasn't a bust in the traditional sense. He wasn't a player who just didn't have the talent. He had elite vision, defense, and IQ. He improved his shooting, but availability matters in the NBA. You can't build a career if you're not on the court. And for Lonzo, injuries took away the consistency he needed to develop and prove himself. There's also the mental side of this that people don't always talk about. Imagine being labeled as the next big thing, dealing with constant media attention, and then having your body not cooperate. Every rehab process, every step back, every time you think you're close to coming back, and then something wrong happens. It adds up. And while Lonzo has stayed relatively quiet through his career, you can only imagine how difficult this all has been. Lonzo Ball's story isn't over yet, but it's definitely been altered in a way that no one expected when he was drafted. From being the face of the new era in Los Angeles, to finding his rhythm in New Orleans, to finally putting it all together in Chicago, only to be stopped again by injuries. It's been a journey filled with highs, stepbacks, and a lot of unanswered questions. And that's really the downfall. Not a lack of talent, not a lack of effort, but a combination of unrealistic expectations, constant injuries, and timing that just never seemed to be on his side. Because sometimes, the biggest what-if stories in sports aren't about players who failed. They're about players who never got the chance to fully show what they could become.